It's week 3, and we're looking at good to better. And so I thought I'd share with you kind of the map of this program so that you kind of not only know where we've been, but where we're going. So here we go here. So week 1 we did Philistines because they're really the key antagonist in this series. I doesn't really know how well this shows up on you, but this is David defeats the Philistines. That's the end goal here. David defeats the Philistines. So that's kind of why we need to introduce who the Philistines are. We said that they're knowledge, right? They're like a spiritual knowledge. They know correspondences. They know spiritual things. They just don't necessarily use them is their problem. So we end with David becoming the king. Last week we did David among the Philistines. Why was David living among the Philistines? And we said, well, wait a second. There's something going on here. Not necessarily as it seems. David's deceiving them, but it's a setup. It's a setup because ultimately he says he's fighting against Judah, but what he's actually doing is fighting against the Amalekites. So it's among the Philistines, but it's a base to go after Amalekites. Why do you need to get the Amalekites? Well, because they are fear, doubt, uncertainty, and all those things. Why didn't Saul beat the Philistines? Because he has fear, uncertainty, and doubt. He has Amalekites. So that leads us, so these 2 chapters are what we're going to look at today. I've skipped over this one, Saul and the Witch of Endor. I'm going to do that next week with these because, well, it just makes more sense to keep the Saul stuff together. I kind of think the Bible is doing a bit of storytelling. We'll talk about David, flash over to this scene, we'll talk about Saul, and we'll flash over to David and do this scene, and a little bit of back and forth, which is fun for storytelling. But I don't want to take 10 weeks to do this, so we will put the Saul chapters with the Saul chapters. And we'll do these today, and then Saul next week, and then this war, 3 chapters of war between the house of Saul and the house of David. So it's Saul's sons who would like to maintain control and kingship, and they start to maintain it on the northern part of the country for a while before they finally end up all on the same page. And then week 6, which will be June 12th, we will have David becoming king and finally defeat the Philistines. And it's a big deal. I mean, just think about that. This is where the Philistine thing ends. Today, though, we get the end of the Amalekites. The end of the Amalekites. So let's dig into this because this is good fun. So, due to time constraints, I'm not going to read everything that's in your order of service, but 1 Samuel 29, basically what's happening here is the Philistines are lining up for battle against the children of Israel. David is among the Philistines, so he decides he's going to join in. Philistines say, whoa, what is this Hebrew doing here? Isn't this the one who they sing about, saying Saul has slain his thousands and David his 10,000s? 10,000 what? 10,000 Philistines. Isn't this the guy who kills thousands of us? Yeah, okay, he's got to go. Achish, who he's been dealing with, says, but this guy's been great. Philistine lords say, sorry, buddy, this guy has got to go. David objects. Achish says, look, you know what? We've been outvoted. You need to go home. Thank you very much. And so David goes back home. Now, I have titled this service Unseen Forces at Work because to me, this is clearly not an accident. What you're going to see here is that because David is away with the Philistines, the Amalekites now have this opportunity to come in and destroy the city that he's been in charge of. So that's this part where this next chapter picks up, where Amalekites have come in. But just think about the providential things that have had to happen in order for the Amalekites to come in and destroy Ziklag. And as we finish this chapter, just think about how this providential thing shakes out with ultimately the destruction of the Amalekites. So to me, there's a clear sense of the Lord manipulating the events in a way that David doesn't even see. right? David doesn't see this. So here we go. Let's read 1 Samuel chapter 30. Now it happened when David and his men came to Ziklag on the third day that the Amalekites had invaded the south and Ziklag, attacked Ziklag, and burned it with fire, and had taken captive the women and those who were there, from small to great. They did not kill anyone, but carried them away and went their way. So David and his men came to the city, and there it was, burned with fire, and their wives, their sons, and their daughters had been taken captive. Then David and the people who were with him lifted up their voices and wept until they had no more power to weep. And David's two wives, Ahinoam the Jezreelitess and Abigail the widow of Nabal the Carmelite, had been taken captive. Now David was greatly distressed, for the people spoke of stoning him, because the soul of all the people was grieved, every man for his sons and daughters. But David strengthened himself in the Lord his God. Then David said to Abiathar the priest, Ahimelech's son, please bring the ephod here to me. And Abiathar brought the ephod to David. So David inquired of the Lord, saying, shall I pursue this troop? Shall I overtake them? And he answered, pursue, for you shall surely overtake them and recover and without fail recover all. So David went, and he and the 600 men who were with him, and came to the brook of Besor, where those who stayed who were left behind. But David pursued, and he and 400 men, for 200 stayed behind, were so weary that they could not cross the brook Besor. Then they found an Egyptian in the field, and they brought him to David. And they gave him bread, and he ate, and they let him drink water. And they gave him a piece of cake of figs and 2 clusters of raisins. So when he had eaten, his strength came back to him, for he had eaten no bread nor drunk water for 3 days and 3 nights. Then David said to him, to whom do you belong, and where are you from? He said, I am a young man from Egypt, servant of an Amalekite, and my master left me behind because 3 days ago I fell sick. We made an invasion of the southern area of the Cherethites, in the territory which belongs to Judah, and the southern area of Caleb, and we burned Ziklag with fire. David said to him, can you take me down to this troop? Swear to me by God that you will neither kill me nor deliver me into the hands of my master, and I will take you down to this troop. And when he had brought him down, there they were, spread out over all the land, eating and drinking and dancing because of all the great spoil which they had taken from the land of the Philistines and from the land of Judah. Then David attacked them from twilight until the evening of the next day. Not a man of them escaped, except 400 young men who rode on camels and fled. So David recovered all that the Amalekites had carried away, and David rescued his 2 wives. And nothing of theirs was lacking, either small or great, sons or daughters, spoil or anything which they had taken from them. David recovered all. Then David took all the flocks and herds they had driven before those other livestock and said, this is David's spoil. So what's going on here, right? You have a couple big things. You have providence working to set David up. You have the destruction of the Amalekites. But what I really want to kind of highlight here is what would you call it? Like the purification of David, like the testing of David. Because if you look at David's life to this point, what is it that he does best? Why is he so good in the Lord's eyes? Well, it's because he always checks, right? The Philistine, Goliath is there. What are we going to do? Oh, we're going to kill him, right? We're going to just, bam, we're going to get him. No worries. He's always he's got the right thing to do. And he's looking at these natural situations and says, it's the Lord's. We've got this. This is the first time we see David kind of on his back foot, right? Ziklag is whacked. It's burnt down and everything's taken. And what? What's going on? How do I deal with this? Well, he does deal with it in a very David way. So as we break this down, let's kind of work through. Now, rewind the tape a little bit. Why do the Philistines say no to David? Why do they not let him participate in their little battle? Well, the writings give us a hint on this, and it relates back to some stories of Abraham and Isaac. Because Abraham and Isaac both portrayed their wives as sisters to a Philistine king. So it's not the same situation of David pretending to be a Philistine, but the idea here is, I think, similar, where Abraham and Isaac portrayed their wives as sisters, basically because that's all the Philistine could understand. Like, the Lord appears to us in a state that we can handle it. In this case, David, a symbol of the Lord, is appearing to the Philistines in a state that they can handle him. Oh, he's one of us. We all have to see God as kind of like ourselves, right? Philistines get rid of David when they realize, wait, this is David slaying tens of thousands of us. Philistines aren't stupid. They say, you know what, this guy's got to go. In the same way, when we find a truth that is just too holy, too good, it's calling us to too high of a perfection, we say, no. I'm gonna disregard that right now. All right, off it goes. So the Philistines get rid of that. But it's in this providential call to the battle that David's away from Ziklag, because the Amalekites wouldn't have attacked. Amalekites, remember, their whole thing is they attack the stragglers, the weaklings. They always go in for an easy kill. They only kick you when you're already down kind of people. So Amalekites go to Ziklag and there's nobody there. Great, we will take all of that stuff. We will take all the people, all the spoils. So this seems great to them, right? Easy conquest, easy conquest. Well, what do they symbolize? What is the wives and the herds and all this? What's been taken? Well, this is basically, in total, the delights of our life. The things that we enjoy. That's all of what's been taken away. So here we have David, this spiritual guy, right? He's working on this higher level of love to the neighbor. And for the first time, something's gone wrong to an extent that he feels no joy. No joy. This isn't working out. Uh-oh, I've been doing the right thing. I've been being kind to other people, looking out, and it's not right. I don't feel good right now. Something's gone wrong. But key to David, how does he get through it? He has to go through this trial. This is a temptation. How does he deal with it? It says, well, David encouraged himself in the Lord his God. Right? Truth draws its strength from the Lord. But the inner man, the inner self, also needs the direction of wisdom. So David goes to the priest and says, get the ephod. He asks, shall I pursue this troop? Shall I overtake them? Right? It's a really simple procedure, right? Okay, I got to make a big decision. Lord, what should I do? Priest, all right, what am I going to do? Should I do this? Should I not? It's whatever you say, Lord, that's what I'm going to do, right? Because in the Goliath battle, he says, I know the battle's the Lord's. Boom, I know this. Let's go. Same basic, mental process here. What shall I do? And the priest says, of course, yeah, you're going to go. So they go, they chase him down, and progress is stopped by a brook, all right, a small stream. Now, we have other water crossings throughout the scriptures, right? The crossing of the Jordan, the crossing of the Red Sea. These crossings of waters represent temptations. That's what David is going through. All right, a spiritual person has to go through a temptation. Now, 200, so a third of his people didn't have the strength to go. All right? They didn't have the strength to go. And what the writings say in that kind of situation is that they have a good heart, but they don't have the truth to go with it. They don't have the combative information to get them through the temptation. So what they have to do is stay with the stuff. They are the guardians of the stuff. And you can see how in a situation like this, stuff is an impediment to an army, right? You're trying to chase down your enemy, having all this stuff, this baggage slows you down. So they say, all right, you guys hang out with the stuff. It'll make our army even better. Which I kind of like the idea, where we divest ourselves of natural stuff and it makes our spiritual abilities even stronger. That makes sense. They're on their way. They find an Egyptian in the field. So the Egyptian, who's been a servant of an Amalekite, all right, Egyptian represents science and scientific knowledge. So, well, guess what? Science can serve good guys or bad guys. It doesn't matter which. So the Amalekite, who's not been well nourished, who's been sick, David says, all right, well, guess what? We can use science in our life. We can fill that with good priorities and good intentions and make it well, right? Because what makes it something sick, right? Filling with bad intentions and bad ideas. So Amalekites made the Egyptians sick. So we go, all right, here, we're going to use science to find out our enemy. And so they do. And when they find the Amalekites, it's a picture of them dancing and hooting and hollering because they've won this battle. Well, not really won the battle. They've stolen all the stuff, really, I guess is what it is. And it's a picture of what our life is like when our kind of carnal animal mind just takes over. Woohoo! Yeah, this is great. It's given up to all sorts of pleasure. So that's what's happened so far. That's what the Amalekites are into. So David and they go and they wipe all those guys out. It's the end of the Amalekites. It's the end of fear. It's the end of doubt. It's the end of the death spiral. When life kind of kicks you and you're feeling down and sad, you don't go into the 3-day, 3-month, 3-week, whatever long death spiral. Because the Amalekites kick you when you're down. That's done. The Amalekites, this is the last you hear of the Amalekites. The 400 that get away, the writings say, well, they left on a camel and they were youth, and therefore they are not confirmed in the Amalekite way, so to speak. These, yeah, they got away. So, yeah, you'll have maybe some lingering doubt or whatever, but it's not like an army nation of doubt that exists. So it's this progression. It's now you have liberation of your natural mind from these things. And look, this is a weird story, I know. I've been, churning through what's the example? How do we see this in life? And I guess for me, I felt like I saw it most closely as I go from a life of working in the business world. I go through years of theological school and a few years working here, and I picked up that part-time gig doing some merchandising work. And I felt like, you know what? I'd lived for 6 or 7 years in this kind of religious bubble of teachings and happiness and with nice people and everybody gets along, blah, blah, blah. And you get sent back out into the real world. And suddenly there's tests. Oh, can you deal with somebody who's not necessarily nice? Can you deal with somebody who's cranky? Can you deal with people who've had a bad day? Can you take the spiritual stuff you've had and you've had an easy go of it to this point and now really put it into practice? It's like I was living among the Philistines, and now I had to use this opportunity to say, you know what? Put this into practice. Face the real world. You got to get rid of the fear and the doubt, because guess what? In the natural world, fear and doubt's everywhere. Oh no, am I going to lose my job? Oh no, did I do this right? Oh no. There's always reasons for fear and doubt. Oh no, the wrong guy won the election, right? Always reasons for that kind of stuff. But the Lord's saying, you know what? I've got unseen forces at work. I've pulled you out of Ziklag so that your enemies can attack you. Why? So that you can be battle hardened. So that you can say, all right, I'm going to check on my procedure. Even when the chips are down, I'm still going to ask the Lord, what should I do? All right? Going to check with the priest. Am I going to do it? Yeah, you're going to do it. It's the same basic procedure, but it's a different circumstance because it's the first time David's really experienced a loss. So the Lord uses these circumstances to raise him up, to make him better, and the same thing's going to happen for each one of us. You're going to have this moment where you decide, yep, I'm going to be a better person. I want to go from good to better. It doesn't just happen in your sleep. You want to go from good to better, you're going to need all these little things along the way, and realize that it ain't magic. You're going to be tested too. The goal the Lord's setting you up for is to defeat the Philistines. But in order to do that, you've got to get rid of those Amalekites first. No more fear, no more doubt, no more kicking yourself when you're down. Amen.